Welcome to Problem Solve, the podcast where me and a special co-host solve all your problems really easily, probably.
Problems? Are you kidding me? I don't have any problems. Okay, I might have a few, but I can work on them with you. Come on.
Adam Dorsey, so happy that you're here with us. How you doing today?
Jeff, I'm stoked to be with you. I'm really happy to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too. Before we get started, can you just introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, I'm Adam Dorsey. I'm a psychologist licensed in the state of California, and I'm working in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm the author of a new book called Super Psyched. It's all about the 4 ways we connect. I really wanted to address that there were 4 ways for us humans to connect. Mm-hmm. I'm also the host of an award-winning podcast called Super Psyched, and I do resiliency work at corporations, set up a 4-year international program at what was then called Facebook, now Meta, and currently am doing that same type of work over at DigitalOcean and do a lot of keynotes, and married, have 2 boys, and got a really sweet dog.
Nice. That's a really, really good introduction. One of the best we've had on Problem Solve. You really covered all the bases, so good for you.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so you talk about on your podcast and in your book, you talk a lot about connection. I feel like you're kind of obsessed with connection. I want to know, well, maybe who hurt you? Like, where is the attachment wound? Why are you so obsessed with connection, and where did this just come from in the first place?
Well, Jeff, you're only licensed in the state of Oregon, so I'm not sure how much I can actually get into it. But as a child, I was misunderstood. I had learning disabilities, and I took what was called the WISC, which is an intelligence test to see where I belong in terms of placement. They said, wow, gifted and intelligent, sure. Except for the fact that I failed. I literally got F. They called them U's. They were unsatisfactory. I made my way out of the gifted intelligent to the kind of average, then below average, and then finally into special education. I marinated in this self-concept of me being unintelligent. The term that they used back then in my childhood, sadly, was that term that's no longer used. Retarded was the term that my peers called me that. Teachers were upset with me because I wasn't trying. They thought it was a character issue. It was not a character issue. And only after I turned 27, several years later, was I diagnosed with ADHD of the inattentive type, and we knew about a reading disorder. My eye bounced. I had an ophthalmologist, an MD, who looked at my eyes and said, how did you get through college with these? I said, not only did I get through college, I'm nearly done with a master's degree. But it was very hard. It would probably take me 5x what it would take a neurotypical to accomplish in, it was just very, very hard. So I'd say a lot of intellectual wounding along the ways. And which also caused me to learn Japanese because it seemed like the Navy SEAL language of language acquisitions.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so there was a lot of you had some like learning issues in school, and I remember, I went to school in the 80s and in the 90s, and I remember getting those U's as well. I grew up in Santa Monica, so I went to all those, LA County school districts, and yeah, the way they sort of like grouped kids that weren't sort of like working up to like some specific standard was like I remember that I was in the gifted group, and then I sort of worked my way down, and as that happened, I felt humiliated, I felt ashamed. I wasn't keeping up with my sister, who was 3 years older than me, who was acing all of the classes, and so it was, and there was also just sort of like the, trying to get the attention from my parents that came through like good grades, and putting those good grades up on the fridge, and trying to hide my report card so that they wouldn't be upset, and then wouldn't put it on the fridge. It was a whole thing. So all of my struggles in academia affected the connection that I had at home. Did it affect yours as well?
A cajillion %.
Yeah.
my father, a physician, well regarded, and my sister, like yours, was the smart one. And I remember walking through the high school halls. She was 2 years my junior. And I remember Mr. Wilkinson stopped me in the hall, and this was not anomalous. There were a few other teachers who said, when I got a Dorsey in my class, I was really worried, but your sister is so smart. And it was like, oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear she is, and I can only infer what you were saying. And all things considered, they did not have the tools available. I have some compassion for the folks who are trying to teach me, and yet, boy, so much unnecessary wounding along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. What was one of the ways? What were your childhood friendships like? Did that bring a lot of connection that made you sort of get through tough times?
Wow, Jeff, you are a very skilled therapist. First off, when I was in second grade, I transferred schools, and I was the least adequate athlete. I'd gone to a private school where there was no physical education. I was, in all measures, the worst athletically in my class. And as such, it was very hard to make friends. My mother can recount the time that I invited every single boy from my class over to play, one by one, and was rejected by all of them. I was socially very awkward. Yeah. It took me a long time to learn how to make a friend, how to be a friend, how to sustain a friendship. I got very interested in friendship, actually. I did a TEDx talk on friendship and adulthood. I'm really, really curious about friendship. And I'm guessing you are on board with the idea that friends are a really big deal. And choosing the right people to be friends, the people who really, really are willing to have a good upload and download. I believe it was Donald Winnicott who said something akin to mental health can be exhibited by one's ability to take in the experience of another and to share themselves with another. So connection has always been a big deal. Going back even further, my mother would describe pushing me in a carriage, and she said that I was the most desirous of attention of any baby she'd ever seen. I just wanted to make eye contact with everyone, which kind of then fast forward even further, and we're kind of going full Pulp Fiction into all types of timelines. But after college and after living in Japan and working there, I became a bank teller for my first round of grad school.
Oh, okay.
And I hated not being seen by the customer. They wouldn't even look at me. They'd say, "Cash this check, take out this money." And I'm reading Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And I thought, how did he do that? He was in the worst situation ever. I'm in an enviable scenario compared to his. How do I make this a meaningful experience as it relates to connection? And I thought to myself, I'm going to make the 120 people who see me, at least for now, as a meat-based ATM, I'm going to have a meaningful connection with 119 of them. And the criterion will be I'm going to make 119 smile, ideally laugh during the transaction.
Wow.
That was my self-imposed challenge. And I became known as the guy to go to for your transaction. People would sometimes say, "No, I don't want that teller. I want the funny guy." And what was so cool about it is everybody goes to at least back in the 90s, everyone went to the bank. Sure. It could be a soccer mom. It could be somebody new in the country. It could be someone who was working on houses, and could be someone who was homeless. You never knew who you were going to get. But if I could make almost every strata of the population smile and ideally laugh, that was actually, oddly enough, I was being paid to use it as a training ground for connection. And, of course, I had to balance at the end of the day.
Right. Okay, now I think I better understand why you're so interested in connection and how it's personally impacted you, and how you sort of came out of the womb ready to connect with people. Yeah.
Dude, if I may even throw out one other thing.
Sure.
In the book, the reason that I had to invest 20 months in writing this thing, it's the first book that I'd started several other books, never finished. This is the one I had to write after about 20,000 hours of conducting individual and couple psychotherapy, after doing about 200 podcast episodes, after reading lots of books, the word connection kept showing up, but no one had really defined it in a meaningful way. Like, what does this nebulous thing called connection really mean? And so I wanted to invest 296 pages of, getting into that and make it really, really easily accessible in my book, as well as help the reader find their own personal formula for connection, which I surprisingly call the connection formula.
Yeah, it's funny because I think that, like, when I heard about the book, I was like, it's a book about connection. It should just be like a page. Do it. Like, go ahead. It's good. Like, we all intuitively understand that, like, I feel like maybe we're humans just here on Earth in order to connect with everybody. But you really break it down and get into it so people can really understand it in a way that maybe they haven't thought about before, and then give, like, really practical tools once you sort of, like, think about it, analyze yourself a little bit, and figure out how you can connect with people or yourself even on deeper levels, so that you can feel more satisfied or content or happy or at peace in life. So it's impressive that you were able to fill that much, a whole book about connection, but it makes sense because there's actually a lot to it.
There really is. And what I was looking at was the 4 lenses through which connection can occur.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
Most of us think about connection in terms of connecting to another, like I'm connecting with you right now, or perhaps connecting with your audience who I've not met and who has not yet manifested themselves because we're recording this now. But at some point, hopefully, the words that I'm using are actually connecting.
Right.
So that's connecting with an other. But what about starting with the primary connection, the nucleus of kind of these ripples? Connecting with oneself comes first. We can't connect with others unless we're really actually connected with who we are. If we're not connected with ourselves, we walk around through life with kind of a metaphorical rock in our shoe all the time. We're not really, you won't really feel me connecting with you if I'm not connected to myself first.
Right.
If I'm pretending to be something I am not or someone I'm not.
Yeah, because then you're just sort of, if you can't, like, connect and feel and understand how you can connect with yourself, then maybe you're just kind of you're blocking your receptors. You're kind of, maybe you're a little outside of yourself. Maybe you're trying to be someone who you're not really. You're maybe not really connected to your emotional center or your feelings or your heart, right? So it's hard to, like, make your way through reality when you're not really connected with how you're feeling.
Yeah, and if you think of it in terms of a computer, it's almost as if my RAM space will be allocated to my self-talk as I'm connecting to you, rather than what's going on between the two of us. I'll be thinking, I better keep up this image so that he thinks I'm this.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than, hey man, who are you? Nice to be with you, Jeff, out there in Portland. So in this case, connecting to yourself first is the starting point. And if you think of it as kind of concentric circles rippling out, self would be at the center. Connecting with others. Others could be connecting with you, connecting with my wife, connecting with my children, connecting with my pets, connecting with my colleagues, connect with the people that you meet when you're walking down the street. If, for those who remember Sesame Street, that was a part of a song. And then the third ripple would be connecting with the world. Connecting with the world could include things like nature, art, and perhaps work itself. And there's a whole chapter on work, and one of the things that I talk about in work, I actually use some of Jana Koritz's work, my colleague out in Massachusetts. She actually explores enmeshment as a concept at work. Like, I am a physician, and I am a physician, I'm a physician, and if I'm fired, or if I lose that status, who am I? I'm nothing else. I'm not a physician, by the way, folks. I'm a psychologist. Yeah. But I'm just using that as an example. Right. But connecting with work is really important, and to connect with it in a healthy way. Work will use approximately 90,000 hours for most of us walking the planet. So connecting with work in a healthful way is a really important thing. The last one is connecting with something greater. Now, the orthodox atheist might initially take issue with the idea of connecting with something greater. There's nothing greater. Well, I would say that what's happening between you and me, Jeff, is greater than me alone. Or if I go to Yosemite and I just kind of like, whoa, wow, have that awestruck experience, it doesn't necessarily have to be religious, but there's something bigger happening. Like, for billions of years, these geological formations that were carved through various natural functions. I mean, that is kind of a moment of grandeur and awe. And that's the fourth realm. And then some people use religion, some people use various types of spirituality and meditation. And that would be the fourth level of connection.
Okay. And if you're feeling connected in all of those levels, then you've won? Then that's it?
You get all the prizes and a brand new car. What you get basically we're looking for little connections along the way. So what I'm looking for is, my son, as I was walking the dog with him this morning, said, kids my age spend 4 hours scrolling a day. That comes out to 1,460 hours a year. That is, if we are awake 16 hours, although probably if you're scrolling that much, you're probably awake fewer. But let's say we're awake 16 hours a day and we're getting a solid 8 hours of sleep. 1,460 hours is like 92 waking days scrolling of our life. That, and then the joke is, it's a red herring. We think it's a distractor. We think we're connecting, but actually we're engaging in FOMO, social comparison. Do we feel better after we scroll? We doom scroll. We try to find out what's wrong. Not really. There's a just right amount of scrolling. I'm not saying don't scroll, but I am saying use it judiciously. Use it like salt or sugar. Use too much salt or sugar, you're going to ruin the dish.
It's so tricky, though, right? Especially with kids and the technology they have access to. I mean, like I said, when I grew up in the 80s and 90s, I would play a lot of video games, as a kid should and would do in the 80s and 90s. I had Nintendo, I had Sega, I loved Mario, I loved Sonic, and I loved playing Mario Kart. And usually when I would play video games, I would play with friends. So it was this like local experience where me and 3 or 4 friends would all play together, and that was a favorite way to connect. I'd also play on my own, but I always had a lot more fun when my buddies were there. Now, kids don't have to play locally, physically in the same space, right? So you can play Fortnite, which is, the #1 video game. And when you're playing Fortnite, you're talking to your other buddies that maybe you've never met, that live across the world, and you connect with them in those ways, even though you've never met their face. You're just looking at their avatar, the character that they've designed. And there's also, you can go a step further. My little nephew, who was 12, was my girlfriend. I met my girlfriend through Fortnite, even though she lives in a different country. And it's well, that's okay. I don't know how to respond to that. So there's these real feelings of connection, but there's this digital wall or digital space that you have to go through in order to connect with them. And I would imagine that's good that there's this feeling of connection, and you could talk to them, even though you're really only talking about the game and how to strategize, and you have a common enemy, and that's a real bonding thing, whether it's in a video game or in real life. But I don't know, what are your thoughts about the kids connecting through video games like Fortnite or Minecraft?
It's interesting. I remember when online dating became a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people kind of clowned on it. Now it's, the regular thing.
It's modern dating now.
It's modern dating. And I would say it's not important how you meet, it's important that you meet. And that it's a good connection. And that it's sustainable, and that it's somebody who allows you to have that kind of upload and download that I was describing, that Winnicott described so long ago, of just this healthy form of the ability to share and to take in.
Yeah.
The other thing that hits me, though, is that our brains are about, our current form of brain, the model that you and I are walking around with, is about 35,000 to maybe as many as 100,000 years old. But certainly very, very, it has not changed very much. We have iPhone 16s now, and we've had multiple incarnations of OS and iOS in just a few years. But our brains are not used to this form of play. The kind of play that you engaged in the 90s was in person, like you were playing Mario Kart in the same room. And even though the game itself wasn't the same kind of game that was played historically, the side-by-side, the parallel play was. And I think that we still need biophilia. We still need to get outside and be around trees and bird song, Birdsong, by the way, very important for our mental health, as it turns out, according to one of my podcast guests, Julian Treasure, who said that it basically signals to us that the world is safe without the presence of birdsong, which means that there are no predators around, because birds don't sing when predators show up. It signals to our rather old brains that we are safe. Sadly, actually, birdsong is being profoundly reduced with deforestation and a host of other things. But getting out there, being amongst trees and the sun, which we know the photons are good for us in many ways. I mean, skin cancer aside, but we need the vitamin D production. We need to get out there and actually allow our suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is in control of our daily clock for sleep. We need it to get that sense of, okay, I'm awake now, and in about, 15-ish hours, 16 hours, I'll start reaching for my melatonin so I can sleep. So we need all of those things, and how we connect, it is really, really important. Our brains are really meant for these person-to-person connections. Now, in some way, I feel really, really, really strongly connected to you right now, Jeff, because I'm seeing you. You got a nice smile, you got a good vibe, got a cool office, and somewhere in my brain, I don't know, I have not explored this, but this is a pretty good way of connecting. This Zoom model is not bad. A lot of people clown on it, but it's pretty fantastic because I see your nonverbal expressions right now, and I rather than on the phone where I'd only hear your nonverbal expressions. I wouldn't be able to see them. I'd see them in my mind's eye, but right now I can see them. So this is a really big deal, and I'm really kind of grateful to Zoom and other companies who've created this virtual ability for us to connect in this way. Not asynchronous either. It's happening right now.
Right, yeah. It's funny. I mean, I think that there's like some amazing technological things that have happened that have caused us to feel even more connected. But it almost seems like, for example, I have a parasocial relationship with my favorite podcaster. His name is Rob Harvilla, and he has a podcast called 60 Songs That Explain the 90s. And have you heard that?
Yeah, no, okay, I'm already in love. You sold me. I'm checking it out.
It's an amazing podcast, and one of the things he does is he talks about the different songs in the 90s, but he ties it back to his childhood and his youth and his teenage and young adult years. And we're like the same age, and so it feels like we've experienced the same things together, and he's such a good storyteller. It's basically just a storytelling podcast, and I love it. But whenever he goes on break, he's done many more than 60 songs. It's a continuous podcast now. But whenever he goes on break, I'm sad. I feel some grief, and I'm kind of constantly checking his Instagram page to see if there's any clues as to like when he's going to come back. He doesn't know me. I only know this like podcast host persona that he's putting out there. It also reminds me of, I remember they asked people way back when like Friends was a TV show, like, how do you feel when Friends is on? Well, it feels like it lights up the same like receptors in my brain, and that feels like they're my friends. And when the season ends, there's a feeling of grief that you go through. And so, listening to my favorite podcast or watching my favorite show probably does light up like connection neurons, but not quite enough maybe to feel like I'm getting the full 360 experience of like being in real connection in real life. But it almost makes me want to find other podcasts that are like that instead of doing the work to find people. You know what I mean? It just, I can just scroll through my podcast. Like my podcast app provides such great podcast recommendations that will give me the same similar feeling. So why not just listen to podcasts every day? I'm not advocating for this, but I feel like technology is setting us up to do that so we can listen to all the podcast ads and yada, yada, yada. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I had my first parasocial relationship that really mattered to me with Jon Stewart when he took over The Daily Show from Craig Kilborn. And I was just like, this is my guy. Like, funny,
as he should
smart, can call Barack Obama dude. Like, this guy's awesome. And, I have these other parasocial relationships. Pete Holmes is one of my favorite people in the way, right? I mean, like, I listen to this guy and I'm on the floor. He doesn't know me. I actually bumped into John once, and I had kind of an out-of-body experience when I met him. But I've not yet met Pete Holmes. I hope to meet him someday. But I have these experiences, and these folks make me smarter and happier. But to your point, we all have different schedules of social needs. Some people, according to my friend and colleague Britt Frank, says that she is, quote, a scorpion because she has the eating schedule of a scorpion as it relates to friendship. She doesn't need to see her friends all the time. Apparently, scorpions don't eat all that much. She's not got the personality of a scorpion. She's got the personality of a really, really kind, brilliant human. But she said there are other people who are more like hummingbirds who need to see their friends all the time. Let's say the Joey Tribbiani's. Joey always needed to be around people.
Sure.
He was the ultimate extrovert on the show.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Ross, he lived on his own. He was just kind of like, hey, I'll show up when I show up.
He had some boundaries.
Yeah, good for
him.
And I think that is really important for us to know who we are in this way. Like, what is my feeding schedule as it relates to friends? And how do I maintain friends? A lot of people let friends slip by, don't maintain those friendships.
Yeah.
And to your point, there is probably, I've not actually seen the neuroimaging studies on what lights up when we see the TV show Friends, but I have the same experience. I just finished Bad Monkey, and I'm not going to get to see Vince Vaughn play that role. And
it's a tragedy.
It was so outrageously hilarious, and a lot of what he did was, improv'd in the show. I mean, I've never met this guy. but I love him.
Yeah.
He's
amazing. And the nice thing about Vince Vaughn is that when you watch that show, you're like, oh, this is Vince Vaughn. This feels like Vince Vaughn. This is not writing. This is who he is. And he actually shows up that way in lots of different movies and stuff like that. So you can still get the essence of Vince Vaughn and so many productions that he's been in. Just side note, I had 12 questions ready for you, and I haven't asked one of them yet because it's just sort of going. So I want to see if I can ask some of these questions because we only got 20 or 25 minutes left.
Bust them out.
Okay. So you talked about how you work with Silicon Valley executives where innovation is king, right? Have you found that deep connection fosters their creativity? Because I imagine that they're all just a bunch of lonely nerds, but are you trying to get them to connect even more in order to be even better creators?
Yeah, so a lot of the folks I work with are C-level folks from Silicon Valley. They are very attractive. They've got a lot of charisma. And oftentimes they are what I call bulls in the boardroom, Bambi's in the bedroom. They're very terrified. They can go toe to toe with somebody like any big name, you name them. And then when they get home to their wives, they're terrified. A lot of their mommy projections come up. A lot of topics aren't discussed at home because they're terrified of the repercussions. A lot of times they also lean too much. And another variation is they lean too much on their spouse because they don't have enough friendships. Maybe they were born in Ohio, they went to school at Princeton, they got their first internship in Colorado, and then now they're working in Silicon Valley, and their friends have kind of fallen off because every time they've moved, they got busier and busier, and they just didn't maintain those friendships. And so the burden to be all things is imposed on the spouse. Esther Perel talks about this a lot. We used to have a whole village. Now the entire village roles are basically placed on the spouse. And I love that idea. Esther is a genius, and I'm so glad
a treasure.
We're alive while she's alive. She's amazing.
Great.
So these are the people I see. Oftentimes they come in very scrutinizing me, very skeptical, I'm not sure about this therapy thing. My wife says I should try it. You got 50 minutes. Go. And usually by around minute 47, they say, I'm in. I don't remember the last time somebody wasn't. Once in a blue moon, I'll get a voicemail, hello, Dr. Dorsey, this is so-and-so's spouse, and I just want to thank you so much. I love what you're doing, and he's just so much more open with me, and we're having so much more fun. He's the guy I fell in love with, something like that. And I mean, when I get a voicemail like that, it's just like, oh my God, gold.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I do see. These are folks who are often quite divorced from their feelings. The inside baseball, the psychological term for it is alexithymic. Alexithymic means unable to put words to their feelings. And one of the things that I actually do is, which may seem so rudimentary, but it's actually very high level, is help them more accurately name their feelings. And that's a really big deal here, because oftentimes they're really good with the thinking and the arguing and the persuading, but they're not really sure what they're feeling. What's that?
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of, if they work in technology or just, in like big corporations, I feel like they're set up in a way to be like, well, you'll be successful if you're invulnerable, right? In order to work up the ladder in capitalism, it's about like stepping over people, not worrying about their feelings, or it's about the work that you're working on. Like, don't worry about the emotions, like just kind of get through it. So you're trying to get them to embrace vulnerability when society, their work, everything is sort of like against them, so that they're not like leaning more into vulnerability and connection. And rely probably too much on their spouse, putting like all this burden on them to be there to do the emotional labor, or to to be the emotional center, or try to like pull feelings and emotions out of them. So I would imagine it's a very tricky thing to do, that maybe you get them to be like, okay, after 47 minutes, this guy might be onto something, and I can see how maybe this would be helpful. However, I would imagine the rest of the time that you spend with them is pretty tricky, because are you like deprogramming them? Are you trying
not.
Are you trying to like convince them that like if you access your vulnerability and your feelings, then this will be good, even though you've been trained not to?
I don't generally think of myself as a minus sign and deprogramming and getting rid of. I generally think of myself as a plus sign. There may be times when I say, going down this particular road, probably not great, particularly around self-talk. I mean, neuroscientists argue about how many thoughts on average we have a day. Let's just say we have thousands of thoughts. Most of our thoughts are the same as yesterday. Mm-hmm. And many of them are unhelpful. I mean, a very common thing that I will hear is really, really harsh self-talk. And that is something I will aim to have them get into, and I'll say it's like a Google search in your brain. If you've lost your keys and you can't find them, and you ask yourself, how could I be such an idiot? In your Google search bar, how could I be such an idiot will yield 100 responses. You'll think of all the times you were an idiot. That's not going to get you any closer to your keys. Mm-hmm. A better question would be, where did I see them last? We'll get better results. Mm-hmm. Who else might know where they are? How can I retrace my steps? One thing I did when I lost something was I looked at my calendar to see where I was at various times. Could they be somewhere? It was actually a wallet. Could it be outside the house? Lo and behold, I had left this particular wallet in my pants that were at the tailor's. Mm-hmm. And the tailor didn't. And she said, "Oh yes, I have your wallet." I was like, "Did you think of calling?" But which is kind of what I think Chandler Bing would have said on Friends. Did you think? Right. But she didn't. She did not think of calling. I did not ask her that, by the way. I just said, "Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Right. I will be there in 10 minutes." But our Google search bar is a nice way of kind of visualizing our self-talk. Mm-hmm. And we have so many tools. One of the things I use a lot of is, self-compassion. I use, to your point, vulnerability in terms of at least being vulnerable with oneself at the very least, and figuring out where and how to be vulnerable. There are obviously certain places where you wouldn't want to be vulnerable. But these tools and these I'm blown away by what psychology is constantly becoming. It's really exciting. We're living in very exciting times. Mm-hmm. Couples therapy, the technologies are at an all-time high. You can choose so many different thinkers to pull from. Whether it's aforementioned Esther Perel, the Harville and Hendricks and his wife, you could pull from Stan Tatkin and, of course, John Gottman and so many others. It's just a very exciting time. And the great news is it's excellent. I mean, the levels of insights that are emerging from people like Brené Brown and others, it's mind-blowing. So this is a really exciting time to be practicing psychotherapy. My clients love it. I'm a geek. I probably put in, and this is not an exaggeration, about 10 hours of learning every week, just in terms of preparing for my own podcast, in terms of just, I am really hungry. My wife and I, when we go on vacation, we bring books of psychology and Audible accounts that are chock full of psych books. We just we can't get enough. I happen to have married a woman who's also a psychologist, and so and our children are doing well in spite of the fact that we're both therapists. A lot of people, I'm joking, folks. They're doing very well.
Yeah.
Partially, actually, because we're therapists. Sure. And both of my sons are stoked to have two psychologists as parents. They think it's fantastic. Yes is the answer. I work with people. I try to do the plus sign, and at times, in terms of if I do any deprogramming, it would be against negative self-talk. Would be the big one.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel so. You've worked with people who have maybe who've made it, who are successful
according to the conventional measures. Yes.
Yet outwardly they've made it,
That's
but
right.
they also feel disconnected. And it feels like there's this psychological flaw in how society defines success. And I wonder, it feels like with your work you're trying to redefine it, but maybe that's not going to put money in your wallet. Maybe it'll cause you to live longer because you have more real, authentic, valuable connections. But the way that society is structured, whether it's through capitalism or just what we define as success, it feels like it's kind of working against us. And it feels like technology, in certain ways, there's wonderful things that technology is doing that you've listed. There's also social media, which feels really addictive and is something that we typically do alone when we're on our phones and we're doom scrolling. So it's fun. Technology is contributing to the demise of connection. They're also trying to figure out how to stay even more connected. But it feels like a real uphill battle against technology, against society, in order to feel even more connected. And I'm wondering, if you could define your own definition of success, what would that be?
It would be a yes and proposition.
Okay.
I would want somebody to be successful to the extent that they want to be. Mm-hmm. And I would want them to know who they are. Mm-hmm. I would want them to know what fills their cup. Mm-hmm. We know for sure that the person with the most toys does not necessarily win, because there's not, to borrow from Mel Robbins, there's not going to be a U-Haul truck bringing them all the way to your grave. They are not, these are not going to matter. What do people talk about on their deathbeds? They have two massive regrets. They regret not having tried things. So I do recommend people take chances and engage in vulnerability. Vulnerability is a precursor to courage. You can't be courageous if you aren't vulnerable. Mm-hmm. You can't get up on stage. The guy who's jumped out of an airplane 100 times as a paratrooper is probably not scared to go skydiving.
Right.
It's not but for me to jump out of an airplane, it would require immense vulnerability and therefore courage. So I really try to help them step into their courage and take chances that are not reckless, of course. Do cost-benefit analysis, risk-benefit analyses, those types of things. And the second thing that we regret at the end of our life is love left on the table. I wish I'd told this person this. You hear this, by the way, in eulogies all the time. I wish I'd told the person who's in the coffin this thing. And one of the things I actually do in my practice is help people write gratitude letters to people while they're living, from whom they can get no financial benefit, but from whom they need to share a little bit more of their hearts. So I think that we can, this is not some type of radical movement of drop all of, this is in no way, shape, or form anti-capitalist. I wouldn't dream of that. I think that we can ascend the corporate ladder to the degree that we wish to. And hopefully not for the reasons of, and therefore I will prove myself, because as Conan O'Brien will tell you, he is rich and famous, and he's still the same guy. What I'm trying to help people do is find the currency as they do what's meaningful outside to fill their own cups in terms of connecting with themselves, connecting with others, the world, and if so inclined, something greater than that. So this is not an either or. This can definitely be, let's do this and that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like to make things either or.
Makes things easier, doesn't it?
It does. It really does make things easier. But I agree that like this is. I think there is a balanced way, most likely, to approach feeling successful in whatever way you want to define that. Even if it's a cold-hearted capitalism, if you want to view it that way. And you can also feel incredibly connected and loved and nurtured by your connection with yourself, with people, with nature, with the world, trying to find awe in or your spirituality or religion. So yeah, it's hard to do because sometimes it's just hard to get through the day. You have like this technology that's amazing, but also feels like it's pulling your attention, asking for your attention all of the time, and giving it the attention does feel like a little bit of a dopamine hit or the possibility of a dopamine hit, right? And like I said a little earlier, it feels like maybe it like feels easier to just reach in your pocket and scroll instead of going to an event and having an awkward conversation with somebody. So yeah, I get what you're saying, and I like the balanced approach, even though I was trying to get you to be real black and white.
And, an awkward conversation is just a few minutes or days away from being a great story. And
Sure.
sometimes the best relationship starts with an awkward conversation, and weeks or months or years later, they're clicking glasses and saying, remember that first time we met and how weird that was? And it's just like, we took a while for us to find our thing, but we found it.
Right, yeah. Do you feel like there is or there might be in the near future like an epidemic of loneliness? Do you sense that that's going on right now?
Bro, it's
like
happening.
that?
It's been happening
Yeah.
for so long that the Surgeon General has said that
Right.
there is a loneliness epidemic. Dr. Vivek Murthy has said that we are actually in a really, really hard place nationally. And in England, there is some chief officer of loneliness. I forget the exact title, but all I can tell you is we are, quote, more connected than ever. And I'm not against technology. I love technology.
Sure.
I love my iPhone.
Yes.
But I know that it's not going to be in a world where I can actually, when I have more than a volleyball named Wilson who I can actually talk to, I need to have a good connection with my wife. For me, that's my primary connection. I absolutely adore her, and I need a particular amount of time with her. Part of my own love language is quality time, although this whole idea of love languages has been somewhat challenged by certain research, but I still like it as something to think about as an avenue. I also know that I need my alone time. I'm an extrovert, and yet I also, if I don't recharge my battery, I'm done. I'm exhausted. And everyone has different connection needs. My father needs to go to the opera. I find the opera a very expensive place to sleep. I don't need to go to the opera. It's actually that's kind of, I'm being a little cheeky here. I actually do enjoy some opera, and I do see the genius in the composer and the librettist and all that stuff. But to your point, I would much rather go see, I'd rather see Coldplay in concert any day than go to an opera. I'd rather go see a lot of bands than an opera. My father doesn't need to touch a dog for the rest of his life. I need to see my dog every day.
Right.
My pet connections are vast and very, very important to me. And some people, not so much. One of the things I actually
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things I actually use is a very easy acronym, all based on research, but I call it the FEED model, F-E-E-D. If an activity, one of the ways you can really look at it and separate, to your point, is this something that feeds me? Does it provide me with flow? Does it challenge me in some way? Does it energize me? Does it require my energy and give me energy back? Does it educate in some way? Am I moving the needle along in terms of my skills or my knowledge? And the last one is there depth? Is it actually meaningful to me? If it meets those four, it's likely a good thing to do.
Yeah, I like that. Because I think it might be a little tricky to get 4 out of 4 on a lot of things that we do throughout the day.
Not all the things, just
No.
maybe one.
Exactly. Yeah, I get it. But to like use that, whatever, template or paradigm, whatever, and kind of go throughout your life being like, okay, does it satisfy all 4 of those? And I imagine that you'll find a handful of things that you do in your life that it does, and you probably really treasure those things.
That's right.
Yeah.
Those become our beloved activities. I do not wish to paint. I suck at painting. I don't like it. But I know some people for whom it would meet all 4. And usually it's the thing that we love the most. I mean, Steph Curry, it's probably making his 3-pointers and playing basketball. I'm not very good at that. But for me...
I mean, compared to Steph Curry, nobody's very good at that, right? So don't be so hard on yourself.
I love that guy so much. He makes me happy in just too many ways to count.
Yeah, he's really special. It reminds me, like, in what we're talking about is that, like, there are some experiences that I've had recently where I can feel connected on so many different levels. I recently went to, like, Weezer is touring right now, and they're playing their Blue album all the way through because it's the 30th anniversary. And so they came through Portland just last weekend, and I, like, went with my friends to go see this Blue album that was incredibly important to me when I was a teenager, and as it was with like my friends and the 20,000 people or plus that were in the arena, and Weezer put on this amazing show, and they had these crazy visuals, and it felt so special. And it was that kind of show where whoever you're around, you are connected to, and you're singing together and you're dancing together, and it's very special. It's the same feeling I got a few weeks prior when I went to go see Green Day play Dookie all the way through, because it's
God, that would be amazing.
It's the 30th anniversary for that album too.
Unreal.
And it's just like, and I was always somebody who was just like, I never want to go to an arena show, but now I am the age where my teenage bands are like playing these incredibly huge concerts. I'm like, all right, I guess I'm gonna go to Blink-182 with 25 other fans.
Dude,
and
I gotta ask you, this kind of goes into section 4 of connection.
Right.
Was it a nearly spiritual experience for you?
It's the closest thing to a spiritual experience I will ever get.
That's what I'm talking about. And one of the things that a component of awe is when we're in an awestruck space of like, wow, I'm watching Green Day do Dookie all the way through, which is a very meaningful thing. And everyone around me is singing, and they're all my brethren and sisters. These are my peeps. We are in a state of awe. When we're in a state of awe, we lose all self-consciousness. It becomes more of a group consciousness. And if you look at our brains when we are on awe, it's very similar to when we're on psilocybin, the psychoactive chemical in magic mushrooms. And it's unbelievable. It's a very spiritual experience. I remember seeing Les Paul in New York City with my buddy Jed, and we were just tripping hard because here was this guy who's 93 years old, and Jed's a killer guitarist. I suck on guitar, and that's not me being self-deprecating. I can play some campfire songs, but not much more. But watching this 93-year-old man just tear it up. And this guy whose name is on all of those guitars that are played by Slash from Guns N' Roses, like, this is insane. And we saw him just a few months before he died. So for those who are compelled to see music, live music, I would say if you can afford it, if there's a way to get there, go. Yeah. It can be very spiritual. Even, a free concert in the park can be. Even a busker at the side of the road can be. Music is one of those great ways for those of us who are music heads to really feel that fourth level. It's usually on the third. It's usually connecting with the world. But sometimes it enters that level of awe, like, oh, my God, this is insane what I'm seeing. It's so cool.
Yeah. And I mean, whether it's Weezer or Green Day or whoever, like, they've also been touring for 30 years or whatever, so they know exactly how to put on an amazing show that creates awe. And it seems like they're also in the zone with you,
Totally.
So it's really connecting.
Billy Joe, let's go, man.
What a treasure. He's a real national treasure. Unfortunately, we've run out of time for today, but can you tell people, remind them about the book that you wrote and also where they can find you online?
So I called it Super Psyched. And it's not just being happy all the time. It's about being super connected to our psyches. And that's really what it's intended to mean. I'm not here peddling toxic positivity, even though I am very positive, particularly when hanging with you, Jeff, because you definitely, there's something that brings you, the second I saw you, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. But you can find the book at Amazon. It's doing very well, thankfully, and at Barnes & Noble. And let's see what else. You can find me at dradamdorsay.com, DRADAMDORSAY.com. Love to hear what you think of the book. I'm on all the socials. My Instagram abilities suck. I need to boost that, but I'm heavy on LinkedIn and. Yeah.
And you also have a podcast.
Oh, that's true, too. I have an award-winning podcast called Super Psyched. And actually, Steph Curry's coach, Steve Kerr, has been on. I've had some really fun guests. Temple Grandin has blessed it. Lori Gottlieb has been on. AJ Jacobs a bunch of times. It's a lot of fun. And thank you for remembering that, Jeff. That's so kind of you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And thanks for coming on the podcast. Highly recommend the book. I'm glad that we've connected. And I encourage everyone to check out Dr. Adam Dorsay. We're going to link to all of the things that you said in the show notes so that people can just get there real easy.
Jeff, it's been a blast.
Yeah, this has been a really good talk, and I'm glad that you stopped by.
Thanks so much.
I'll talk to you later.
I look forward to it. I hope so.